For some reason, I seem to keep up with all things superhero news, and well, if you do too, then you probably know that they cast Zachary Levi for Shazam. So, okay, sure, he might be great on that, and to be fair, DC and casting doesn't tend to be the problem with their movies, but they really should have cast Jason O'Mara. He would have been perfect. I mean, an absolute perfect Shazam. If you don't know who Jason O'Mara is, just look up Jeffrey Mace, Season 4, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Hey guys, Hardware Hound, I am back, and this time we have a couple of cases to look at, and from a company that we've looked at a couple of times. So Raijintek sent me their Thetis, which is, you know, kind of a micro ATX little system, and they also sent me the Asterion Plus, which is a full tower supporting up to eATX style motherboards. So I've gotten to be a pretty big fan of Raijintek and really like some of the things they're doing. Let's see if they can keep it up with these two cases. But I also, before we go looking into closer looks and building and stuff, I just want to do a quick shout out to these new chairs that I've got from Ewin. I tell you what guys, these chairs are extremely comfortable. I'm really enjoying what they do. So take a look at ewinracing.com. You can see their sites, and if you use the promo code PUREOC, P-U-R-E-O-C, in the description below, you can get an additional 15% off. So yeah, check them out. I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't, this is just a completely personal preference on my part. I'm actually really liking what Ewin's doing. Feel like you guys could use a good gaming chair, and I think you're gonna find this is about the best quality and cost balance you can find on the market. Anyway, so without further ado, let's go ahead now, get into the cases. Once again though, very similar to the other case, we have a brushed aluminum finish and feel. I mean, this is actually aluminum paneling. It's fairly light, but still really sturdy, feels good. I really like the all black look. It looks really nice. Once again, Raijintek, just like they really like their USB 3.0s, they're not wasting time with 2.0s. So we have 2.0 ports right there in the front. Very straightforward, very simple. Now, there's a lot more about this case. It's pretty easy to check out. I'll let you look at that specifications, but let me pull these panels off. We don't have one hinge, simple opening hinges. We've actually got 4 thumb screws holding the glass on instead of like a swinging door action like we saw on the Asterion. But that's not a big deal. I mean, it's a smaller case. It's going to fit into a tighter budget as well. Let's take a quick look inside. All right, those panels came off really easily. So even though you got the 4 thumb screws, Raijintek has plenty of rubber mounting so that there's actually no metal contact on the glass whatsoever. So if you pay attention to a little bit of what's going on here, you can see that we've got an upside down mount motherboard here. So the motherboard's going to be upside down. We've got the back of the case here, a little opposite of what we normally do because, well, the case is kind of flipped in every sense of the way. So normally you would have the motherboard tray in the back, and the back input-output section would be here. So in this case, we have the exact opposite, kind of just a design feature, and they're doing this for a couple of reasons. For one, obviously, we want to have room for graphics cards and various devices like that. But for two, it could just be design, because there's probably other ways to make things work, but our power supply is actually going to mount right here. And so in order to keep the power supply plug and everything going out the back, they've given us a nifty little extension guy right here so that we can still have the PSU mounted towards the front, but route the power cabling towards the back. So yeah, that's not a bad little feature. The glass panels were really kind of thin and light, but they didn't feel too thin. So it's a really good mix for making this case very manageable and easy to move around, especially for small form factor. Our cable management space is once again just superb. I love how much finger space I have between the motherboard tray and where the glass panel is going to fit. So I would imagine that cable management is going to be very easy on this case. Of course, we're going to prove that here in a second. Once again, I already talked about that PSU cable extension, but there it is right there. You got just a nice little spot to plug in so that your cables are still going out the back of the case, but you can mount the PSU more towards the front. I think this design concept is something that could revolutionize the way that cases are designed. It needs to be implemented even more. Kind of happy to see Raijintek messing with it. I just got my finger caught between something and something in that case, but thankfully I'm okay. It's all right. Let's go ahead, start moving on to the build, see how this baby does. So let's talk about what Raijintek is doing here. Let's just do a quick little overview. For starters, we have a brushed aluminum look and feel to this case, which is pretty fantastic if you ask me. It's not a very thick aluminum, but it's just enough to give you a good, sturdy, solid feel to the case. Looks very nice. I'm very impressed by it. On the top level here, I'm gonna try not to destroy stuff while I'm doing this. We have 4 USB 3.0 ports. Raijintek is committed to USB 3.0, and with the newer computer components coming out, I really like that. So overall, outside of this case, looks fantastic, very professional, very sleek design, very easy to move and manipulate though, not too heavy. One of the other things that they've done, so this isn't tempered glass, it's actually still just acrylic, but they at least did the shadow. And what I've noticed is when you kind of do a shadowing on acrylic, it looks a lot better. It doesn't get cloudy and it looks much nicer. Otherwise, it just needs to be a tempered glass panel. So this is great. This is going to help with cost efficiency. I love the fact that this is a door on a hinge. You don't see that very often. Once we're inside, we can just see there's a lot of room in here. Now, I will link to the site below. If you want more specifications and details, I'll let you go to the site and check that out. But for now, I just want to do the quick overview. PSU cover, plenty of room right here in the front to have radiators and fans dropping all the way down. So this is going to support liquid cooling very well. Lots of space in the top as well. So this is a very, very roomy case. Once again, those channels are just one hand. You can snap them on, snap them off. Same thing on the back side. Bam. Lots of space for cable management. I mean, look at that. I can fit more than enough finger space to be able to have room for cables. This is a nice looking case. I'm already pretty excited about what I am seeing here. Let's go ahead now, jump right into the build and see what this case can actually do for us. Oh, right. One more thing that I almost completely forgot on this. See this slot right here? This is a mount for a slim DVD CD drive. I love that feature. This is something that I think every case should do nowadays. Get rid of the 5 1/4 base. Just put an option in case you need a CD drive for a slim drive that you can easily stick into a little crevice like Raijintek did. That's beautiful. Fantastic. I love it. Even though I may not use it because I've pretty well ditched it, I still love that option. And this one, you can use a type of CD drive that you just kind of slide it in and it just sucks the CD or DVD right in. So that would be kind of fancy to just be like, oh, I'm just gonna slide a disc right in. So need to point that out. All right, now let's move on. Time to get into this build process. So as usual, I'm gonna just kind of install stuff and just highlight my process rather than trying to give you a really long, detailed step-by-step. So power supply, this is a little different. This case right now is actually sitting on its front panel. Front panel is right here on the bottom of the desk. This is actually the bottom of the case. So this is a front-mounted PSU with the exhaust pointing out the bottom. They've got a little bit of a cutout so that you can kind of tuck this cable away and make sure that, you know, it's not getting caught underneath your case. There's an extension cable that's going to run this to the back so you can plug your power in up top here. So one thing I noticed is this cutout is a little tight to get the screws. There's a screw here that is really hard to get to. I would say 3 screws in this particular case is going to be enough, but it looks like Raijintek includes some slightly longer screws to be able to use to go into the power supply, which is good to help keep things from stripping out. So as you can see now, once I get this thing stood up, that's kind of how your unit's going to look. Now I've got the fan pointing inside here, but you could also point the fan towards the front. I went ahead and did this way because it puts my cables more closer to the cable management, but I don't really think it's going to make a huge difference. So that's kind of how the power supply works. A little bit different. I like the concept already. Let's go ahead, move on to further parts of the build. Okay, let's talk about this motherboard because this got pretty interesting, and I feel like there's a couple of things that I would like to point out to save you a little trouble. For one, normally I always install my PSU first, but this would be one instance where I probably wouldn't install the PSU first. This PSU was pretty difficult. It kind of cut the space to get the motherboard in. As it was, there was still enough space, but it's a little tight. It would be way easier to put your motherboard in first, then drop your PSU in. You'll notice this is actually kind of backwards compared to what my CPU cooler would normally be. I've got my hoses closer to my RAM slots and then coming up to the radiator, because the radiator is at the bottom of the motherboard, even though this is the top of the case. We have an upside down motherboard. So just something to keep in mind there. I'd recommend, swapping your cooler around. Make your hoses not have quite such a harsh bend in them and stuff. Plus we need to keep room for a graphics card to go in here in a little bit. So yeah, overall, that wasn't too bad though. I mean, pretty solid install. The case feels extremely sturdy though for such a tiny little aluminum case. Now, Raijintek does have a dust filter that goes into the top. And what you'll notice is there's these 2 little clips here, just little tiny clips. And so all you have to do is just push these back and then this thing just pops right out. And so as you can see here, I have my radiator installed and they've got a good little 240 mount right here. It's perfect. So all you have to do is just drop your little corners in and this thing just snaps right down. So that's an excellent design on that level. One thing though that I did find kind of curious is installed at each end of that 240 mount were these brackets. And so what it kind of did was it was screwed in on these 2 little mount sections, and then you have like this offset for your radiator. I'm not really sure why, but it was there. It's really easy to just take it off. I might be able to find more info on it if I was really looking, but it looks like it's just something that kind of gives you some options, some spacing, and all around, I'm never going to complain about having options, especially if they're very easy to work around. So I'm going to go ahead now, drop the GPU in there, my graphics card, and then we're going to start. Oh, I do one thing I like. Because I'm going to have a downflow going out here and out with my PSU design, what's going to end up happening is I'm going to have a direct airflow going directly to my graphics card. That's going to be cool. So I like that aspect of an upside down mount. Let's see how the card fits in there now. Okay, so GPU is really piece of cake. I will say though, if you have a liquid cooling system, kind of like what I've got here, you're going to have to be cognizant of the fact that a longer GPU may not fit around your hoses. So that's just something to keep in mind with this kind of case. But outside of that, GPU, it's kind of strange putting it in upside down, but overall it went in nice and smooth. Another nice little point that I like, they've got all removable slot covers. None of them are spot welded. They're all just screwed on, so that way you can keep a really nice clean aesthetic. If you put a card in a random slot, change a motherboard, have to move for some reason, you won't have a blank space that you're permanently stuck with. And I always like to see that. Of course, Raijintek went all out and they went ahead and got the screw cover as well to keep the build looking even cleaner. GPU is a good success. Let's see how this cable management works. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the cable connections and the hard drives. Cable connections aren't the easiest things, but I mean, come on. It's a small form factor, and that's just kind of par for course. Trying to get the USB 3.0 and the motherboard connector in this tight slot with the power supply in was pretty tricky. And I think this is one of the rare exceptions of a case where I would have to say you would want to actually screw the power supply and anchor it down as a very last step. If I just pulled this guy out, it would give me all the room in the world, and then I could just kind of slide it in. But you'd need to make sure you really route those cables good. So you kind of want to set this in, see where your cable management's going to be, and then go from there. But that's not something I really blame Raijintek for. That's just a small form factor for you. On the plus side, they have excellent cable management slots on both the top and the bottom. So it's super easy to route SATA, audio, power buttons, CPU connectors. Everything there was excellent. And the cable management on the sides, even though there's a lot of it that gets covered up by the power supply on this end, and you have a little bit of space on the back end there that you could squeeze through if you had like an ITX motherboard instead of a micro ATX. But overall, I mean, it's got some pretty good space there. You have room to mount what looks like a full 2.5 inch or 3 bigger hard drive. Like your typical old school 7200 RPM hard drive up here. And then on the back side, you've got room for a couple of solid states. So yeah, not a bad setup there. Let me go ahead and clean up those cables a little bit more, and then we'll start kind of seeing how this guy looks on. Okay, time to level out my first real complaint against this case. My cable management space is really excellent. I mean, they got a good amount of room here, and that's awesome. They didn't include very many zip ties. Now, granted, I have a plethora of zip ties lying around, but that's because I do reviews and I have a plethora of zip ties from all these samples, and I buy stuff all the time. But if you're doing a first-time build, doing a small form factor, and you don't have any extra zip ties, you're going to have troubles. I used a twisty tie to keep my motherboard cable down here, and then I had one zip tie here, and I could do enough. But I think that's one thing I would really like to see Raijintek do, is add more zip ties. But really after that, the space is really nice, and I have plenty of room the glass panel is going to have just a little bit of a snug fit, but nothing that's worrying or like, oh no, I'm going to crack the glass trying to cinch this down. So space-wise, I gotta say, overall, I'm really pleased with how this case has come together for a small form factor build. I really am enjoying the quality of it. Let's go ahead, put some panels on it, fire it up, and do some last looks. Okay, so yeah, we've got a finished build here. So the tinted glass panel's great. We're not going to have the most perfect cable management job, considering that I don't have cables cut to exact length and stuff, so we're going to have extra slack things we got to tie down. But the tint kind of covers that up a little bit. But then we can go ahead, flip this guy around, and right there you can kind of see that we've got just a really nice looking build in there. So everything is nice and tucked away. It looks very clean. Really nice form factor on that. This is a great little case so far. So I think we need to go ahead and put the final panel on, put some light to this thing, and see how it looks as a final display. All right, so we have a finished build. Got it turned on. Nice simple little airflow design. Little white LED just for a little bit of flare, but nothing too fancy. Of course, we don't have any RGB, and I'm always sad about that. But this is a very, very elegant looking case. The brushed aluminum with the black finish is fantastic. Everything looks really sharp. So, unfortunately, the first step of my build was not a super smooth one. And, well, the power supply had just, a little bit of issue here. Not a terribly bad thing though. So Raijintek has included a removable bracket so that you can mount the power supply to it and slide the unit in. But unfortunately, the cutout that they used to slide the PSU through was not large enough. So it like barely fits this ATX standard. Now maybe it has a little to do with the Max Titan, but I don't think that's the case. and the grill on the Max Titan is just sticking out just enough with the screws that it wouldn't slide in. So what I had to do is I had to remove the PSU cover in order to get this unit in. But that's where the good news starts coming in. So this PSU cover was extremely easy to remove. So what you're going to have is on the back side of the motherboard tray, you're going to have 3 screws that you remove. And then on the bottom of the case, there's 3 silver screws that you remove. And then don't forget that on the back, there's one little screw here. Let me see if I can get that to focus in a little bit better. There's one little screw here that you also have to remove. So once you get all those removed, this cover just slides right out, piece of cake. So then, of course, if we wanted to put it back in, we can just slide it right into place. Bam. Our PSU is covered, and whoa. Let's watch out for some sharp edges here. Like, I just got myself on the edge of that case right there. Man. Huh. Anyway. See, I put blood, sweat, and tears into my reviews. So yeah, this PSU cover just slides right back into place, and you're good to go. But I'm going to take it out because I love this Enermax Max Titan power supply, and I really want to show this guy off. It is a fantastic unit. I love the sleeved cables. So we're going to show it off, and we're going to go ahead and move on to the other components. Okay guys, so I kind of just tore into this build and voila, it's done. You know how I like to kind of keep these things short anyway, and the only reason why I really would want to do anything that takes step-by-step processes is if there's something that was weirdly complicated. So I did forget to make one mention, and that is these panels do easily come off. They just slide right off the top of the hinge, and so as you can see, you can just line them back up to the hinges here and slide them back on so that's back in place. So I don't want to put it all the way on because they're a little sticky, so you just have to kind of put a little force on them. But yeah, the build was just fantastic. After having a little issue with the power supply and that cutout not being big enough, everything else was a dream. Let's talk about this. Plenty of room for radiator and fans in the top, with room to spare to get my cables through. So no problems installing things in just about any order. I know better. You never install your Crossfire setup until you get all your little bottom connections in. And yet, I forgot, installed my Crossfire setup, and I still have enough hand room. It was a little tight, it wasn't easy, but because I didn't want to take the card back out, I was still able to put my audio connector in and some fan connectors in for these 2 front fans that I kind of forgot to do before I put the graphics cards in. I love eATX cases, and this is why. It makes everything easier. Once again, kind of like the Thetis, we have a flush back panel on this case, which will make it really easy to see all of your input-output connections there. We have a cover, which I haven't put back on just yet, but we have a cover to cover the screws, so it makes the build look cleaner. One of the things though that you might remember is if you've seen my Roswell Cullinan review, these motherboards with all this shielding that they put on the audio and the panel and stuff, the audio kind of made it really hard for me with this flush mount to get my graphics card in. But Raijintek put plenty of space right up in here that it was no trouble at all. So this build was a dream come true. And so let me see here. I know I got a dust filter around here somewhere. Aha, put it across the room. So yeah, once again, looking here, I'm gonna pull this baby down. So with the radiator, really easy to mount. Just bam, all the mounts right there. And the way that they did this dust panel is just fantastic because there's just a few little clips, and then all you have to do is just slide it in, pop it right down. I love the way they did their dust filters on this case. The bottom ones are not super easy to remove. And I'm gonna pull that out just to see real quick. They are screwed in, so you would have to flip the case over to get them out. But I do like the fact that they're not gonna be rattling and everything in there either. So yeah, that's the front part. Let's go ahead and look at the cable management, talk about that in the hard drives. So cable management is a little bit of a conundrum on this case. Now, the good news is we've got crap tons of space back here. And we're going to test my theory on that here in just a second because we're going to close this lid. But there's a couple of problems with it. For one, there's not a whole lot of tie-offs. There's a few tie-offs here, down the center, down the side, and that's about it. And, you know, it would be nice, it would be really nice if they had a little more tie-offs, like say to the back, so that your CPU cable could be nice and tied down. Have a few more along the bottoms and along this edge, just to really, like right here, you know, I've just kind of got my fan connectors just kind of pushed in. It's not very clean. And it's kind of hard to get it to that point based on how everything, there's just not enough tie-offs. If we had a few more spots to tie off, that would help a lot. That said though, the space is fantastic. Looks like everything's gonna fit great. You got plenty of options to mount your hard drive. Of course, I'm mounting it on the back here with my SSD. You could also mount it here in the front. You know, if you have, I'm trying to remember how the regular hard drives mount, but you can almost probably fit a full 3.5-inch drive. But you know, you've got the trays down here to mount regular hard disk drives, which would be the better option anyway. So yeah, everything here is pretty roomy, pretty nice. Now, one thing that Raijintek did from the hop was they had all of their input-output cables here for like the power buttons, USB and stuff. They had them tied down this center port, which got in the way of my radiator up top. So all you had to do is untie it and bring it over, and then it's fine. So, drum roll. If we have as much room as I think we do, then in theory, we don't have as much room as we think you do. You know why? Because I grabbed the wrong panel. So if you grab the wrong panel, it won't work because it'll catch the top of the case and we'll have problems. But that's okay, because like I said, these panels are really easy to remove. Slap that back on. Let's try this one more time. Making sure everything's kind of out of the way, and snap. So yeah, we have room, but we're gonna see an issue here if we don't get these all tied down really good. And I'm gonna try to angle this over here. I'm gonna just take a look real quick at my screen and see if I can get this right where I want it. There we go, you can see it now. See how that edge there is popping out? That's because my cables are pushing it. So without anything to latch that into place like that, we're gonna have that problem. This won't be a huge problem, but it would have been much better if Raijintek had included much more cable ties. Without the number of cable ties that they have, it's gonna make it a little hard if you don't have any extras. So I'm gonna go ahead, clean that up, and then we'll start looking at the finished build with it powered on. Bam, there's our finished build, and we're all powered up and running smooth. So yeah, I love EATX towers. I love the fact that you can see the entire build really well. It looks really sharp to be able to see the whole 9 yards like that. Raijintek, on this particular case, we don't have tons of fancy RGB effects. Their included fans just have a simple white ring. But as you can kind of see, that's not too off-putting for all the crazy amounts of colors I've got going on in my build. So that's not too terribly bad. Also, you could always upgrade fans later and do that after the fact. So yeah, I love the EATX thing. It's very nice. But let's go ahead and see what it looks like with a tinted panel on there. So once again, you just have to line up your hinges here. Make sure that slides all the way down, and boom. Now on the front side, that latch panel makes way more sense because there's nothing here that's going to really push out. And there's so much room that we're not gonna have to worry about it. On the back side, even with all the cable management space there is, you're gonna have some cables unless you have like everything custom length, they're gonna push out. So if these like top brackets were a little more rigid, or this was actually glass instead of like a plexiglass type panel, it would do great. But as it is, beggars can't be choosers. The tinting looks fantastic. It'll show just enough of the lights, but keep enough of the rest of the build in mystery so that, you know, you can't see some of the nitpicky points that you can see. Of course, if you just want to show off, then you open her up and show off. So yeah. I'm pretty happy with this case. There's only a few minor nitpicks that I've got, so let's go ahead, wrap up this review, and give this case an award. Okay, so summing everything up, I mean, Raijintek has some really interesting offerings going on here. I really like their quality, and I really like some of the features they're doing. That said, they're not doing anything in these cases that are completely revolutionary. A lot of their design, a lot of their scheme is pretty reminiscent of some other manufacturers out there. But they do offer just enough flares to let them stand out in ways that I appreciate. Like especially with the Asterion, I love the fact that they put that CD drive, that slim CD drive in the front, which gives you an option to have it, but then if you don't need it, you don't have this ugly bay drive just sitting there empty with no purpose. So as always with the review, we got to take a look at pricing and seeing what we're doing. Now, let's start off with the Thetis. The Thetis is on Amazon now, and availability with Raijintek is looking much better. It looks like they've got some good stock on Amazon and even Newegg, although Newegg is a bit pricier. So on Amazon, this Thetis was running $90, and you know, that's a decently steep price in comparison to a lot of, you know, micro ATX cases out there. But considering we've got solid brushed aluminum and tempered glass panels, that's not a bad price. So really, we're talking about a really decent case here, and the price isn't terrible. Even if we would like to see a little better, you know, your company can only do so much depending on the amount of quality and materials they're putting in it. The Asterion, now there is some just minor issues, you know, especially the panel getting pushed out and not having enough zip ties. Those are little things that, while they're not really big deals and are easily fixed, you know, if you just buy some extra zip ties from the hardware store and just make sure you tie your cables down really good and make do with what you have, you can easily get around any issue that the Asterion has. But I like to see those issues not even come into play. So, you know, even though they were minor things, I love the look of this case, and I will say their layout was just perfect. I mean, flawlessly executed, giving you plenty of room for cable management, plenty of room to install hardware pieces. So the Asterion is a case I really like. In fact, man, unless I end up with a quad stellar anytime in the future, this is going to be on my bench, because even though I kind of wanted the idea of a bench case, I actually just like having a normal computer case to keep my test parts in and running out of that. And I like this Asterion for the size, so it's going to stay on my desk for a while, most likely. So with all that being said, I'm going to give both the Raijintek Thetis and the Asterion Plus Pure Overclock's Great Hardware Award. I really think you guys should be checking out Raijintek. I'll have links in the description below. These will go to their Amazon and Newegg pages, so that way you can kind of see what kind of products they have. Really guys, Raijintek, I think they got some great potential. I think they've got super solid products now. Check them out. As always, tell me what you think of the video. Tell me what you think of the reviews. Like and subscribe if you want to keep me going. And, well, I'll catch you later. Hey guys, real quick pro tip from my pharmacy job. So on the other panel, I started to pull off this caution glass sticker, and it tore. And you know how much you hate trying to pull these stickers off, trying to get them to come off clean and neat, and not have to scrape it with your fingernails and all that. So a quick little trick, just take a few seconds and rub the sticker and try to get it to heat up a little bit. And you only have to do this for probably just a few seconds just to kind of warm it up. Then after you do that, you can just kind of pull it nice and slow, but your sticker will come right off. Oh, I lost just a little bit of that corner right there, and that was it. It's gone. So yeah, there's your pro tip of the day, getting stickers off glass. Just rub it and warm it up a little bit. It comes off a lot easier.